Brought to you by Crimson Cult Media.
We got you now.
No turning back.
Welcome to Moths to the Flame. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back, Morbid Moths. Today we have A.L. Davidson with us. Welcome, A.L.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am super excited to have you here. You are, if I'm not mistaken, a writer of massive space operas and tiny disturbances, which I think is super fun. I can't wait to talk about that. A.L. Davidson is also a webcomic editor at Comic Book Yeti and recently signed with Timberghost Press on their upcoming novel, The Scientists, the Spacemen, and the Stars Between Them, which is a queer eco-space horror coming out in the second quarter of 2024. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Let's tell us about that.
Like I said, I managed to talk them into releasing it on my birthday next year, so I'm super excited about that.
Serendipitous. I love that. That's fun. So what's it about? We know queer eco space horror. Let's dive in.
Yeah, it's a little bit Lovecraft, a little bit Autopsy of Jane Doe, a little bit Alien. The whole thing takes place in a remote space station in deep space, and it's about a mortician who finds a strange parasitic anomaly happening in all the bodies that are arriving on their slab, and their husband is off colonizing other planets, and so it's kind of a race for him to get back home before all hell explodes in this tiny, like, remote morgue. And there's lots of like cool zombies and lots of bugs and eco horror type of stuff. So it's
yeah, that sounds like so much fun, and it's kind of a blend between your two worlds because you also work part-time with a funeral home. Is that correct?
I do. Yes.
Awesome. So I definitely want to dive into that about how working in the funeral industry kind of impacts and steers your writing. So how long have you been in that funeral space?
It's been I want to say almost a full year. I got hired in February of this year. And I absolutely love it. I am now a licensed funeral director, but working 40 hours a week is a little bit too hard for my body. So I'm licensed, but I work currently as an ambassador to where I'm just there day of helping the family and getting the flowers set up and making sure, the body looks presentable or the urn is, free of dust and things like that. So it's more of a kind of an on-call type of position of like you're working when, there's something to be done. And some of them are like, we had a 24-hour service last weekend, and so people were there from like 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. the next day, and it's just an interesting field to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wild. So when getting your license, which congratulations on that, that's super exciting.
Thank you.
How long does it take to get a funeral director? I know that there was a program in Nashville. I'm from Tennessee, and there's a Gupton College out there, and I think it takes like a year. Is that standard or?
It depends on the state to state requirements. I live in Kansas, and so for the people in Kansas, it is just a test. That's all you have to do is you have to study, read the guides, and take the test to be the assistant. And it's 2 years of schooling to be a full-fledged director that has like the embalming and the crematory and things like that. But I know in Missouri, to do like what I do, which is like the assistant funeral director, it requires a year of apprenticeship and 2 tests. So it varies from state to state depending on what's going on. It's like that whole weird thing that happened in Colorado where they don't have much regulations at all, and they just found the guy who had like 100 some odd bodies in his basement because it's not regulated. So it just really depends on states and who's running things.
That is wild. That honestly makes me feel like I need to write nonfiction about that, because I love nonfiction diving into, kind of exploring that realm. And that is fascinating to me. I guess I just expected, I work in education, and so licensure is pretty similar across the board, and so I just assumed, I guess incorrectly, that it was the same for every state. So that's wild. So there's no like national board of funeral directors that like keep the law of the land. Like, it sounds kind of
No,
Wild West out there. I'm liking it.
it is. Well, and then like that's the interesting thing too is because it just depends on like the culture and the laws and things like that. Like we only have one like natural burial place, which is one of the ones they just kind of like wrap you up in a cloth and put you in the ground with nothing else. And there's only one like officially licensed funeral like cemetery that's like that here in the state of Kansas. But like in other states where that's more like where, you know, the mountains and the eco, that's just kind of like a thing that normal people do. And we have those new ones that they'll turn like instead of cremation that they will turn you into compost, and there's only like 5 states that have those, so it all just really kind of depends on the culture and the boards. And you know, because that was my job that I had before COVID. I worked for a wellness chiropractic office, and from state to state, that was another thing that all the boards just wildly varied. And so you never quite know when it comes to those sorts of things, especially in like the health and wellness and like life type of stuff. You never know what you're going to
Yeah.
expect. It's so strange.
That is wild. Well, and I'm morbidly fascinated, obviously, Moths of the
Right.
Flame, with all things, you know, death and end of life and all the, you know, some of my friends who are funeral directors, all the time I'm asking them, I'm like, okay, but is it legal if? Can I have this done? Can I do this instead? Like, can somebody just take my body and put it in a case? Like, you know, and then they're telling
Yep.
me in the state of Tennessee, you know, like a Viking funeral, like the funeral pyre and the boat and all that, like
Right.
not legal, not allowed to do that. But
Right.
Colorado totally is. And I was like, well, that's shitty.
Yep.
That, you know, like we got the shit end of the stick out here. Granted, we're out in the country, so you have all these like I literally know people that have just not called any kind of funeral services in and have done their own thing, and I'm like, you do you, but woo-wee, I don't want to be getting any kind of, you know, charges or anything. But yeah, that's wild. So what an interesting field. What drew you to the funeral industry?
I'd kind of always been one of those, again, morbidly fascinated by it. I remember when I had very severe, like, undiagnosed anxiety as a kid. And so my parents were like, she's weird. What do we do with her? She's
Same,
not making friends.
same.
What do we do with her? And so they took me
Yeah.
to like a therapist to be like, hey, can you help figure out like what happens? Kind of thing like that. And the first thing that I did was they had like, you know, how they have like the sandbox, like in like Us, where they're like playing with the sandbox and you pick out the toys and you're like, this is how you're feeling. I immediately went for the cemetery set with the Casper figures because I liked that spooky stuff. And of course they were like, your daughter's depressed. I was 6, but they're like, she's depressed and she needs medication because she's like obsessed with death. And you know how the 90s, you
Oh,
know,
I know.
therapists
Yeah.
were.
Oh, yeah. We were all freaks.
um,
Yeah, for sure.
right. But it was one of those that when I was 19, my mother passed away unexpectedly and my father passed away
Mm,
6 months later. And so after that, you're just
my
kind of like,
God.
and I had 2 younger siblings, and you're just kind of like at that point of like, well, nothing can bother me anymore.
Right. I am
And
traumatized out. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah. Oh
yeah,
my
and so I had
God.
been trying to get into it and just never had like the right like chances and opportunities. And I was working on a novella script, and I had emailed a local funeral home here, and I was like, hey, I have weird questions. Can I just come in and like tour and see how things go? And once I got into like the behind the scenes of it, and like she had no sense of like privacy or shame. She's like, yeah, whatever, you want to come in and see, we're cremating a body right now and you can look in and watch it. And I'm like, I'm just a random stranger who emailed you on the internet.
Yeah. Like
but
that's
but
apparently okay. Yeah.
but yeah. And so after that I was kind of like, man, this is really something that I like. And the funeral home that my the cemetery, it's a funeral home and cemetery combo, and so they have, my parents were interred there, and it's really close to where I live. And they're like, hey, we have these positions called ambassadors open that basically you're just kind of like an on-call, like it's very similar to running a wedding, so you're almost like a wedding planner
Like a
that they're
coordinator,
helping.
a funeral coordinator.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're kind of just like an on-call type of thing. And then I was finally able to get licensed, and now I can do technically all the fun stuff, but I'm kind of like, I'd rather just do the day of and helping with the families. And you know, it's
Yeah.
hard to sit in a room with a grieving family and be like, let me charge you $10,000 to put them in a box
Yes,
day in and day out.
that is rough. Well, and this is my annual reminder to the public that you can buy a coffin or casket on Walmart.com for less than they charge at the funeral home. So, isn't that crazy? When I found that out, I was like, this is my new mission to tell the world.
We've had some families that were just like, we don't like any of the like urns that you have available, we just got ours off of Etsy or on Amazon. And it's at that point where it's like, you know, if you find something that's more custom, especially like if it's like a little kid, you don't want to get a big ugly grandma urn for your baby, you
No,
know, stuff like that. And so when you
no.
find something that's cute and sentimental, it's always kind of like, yeah, you do go do your own thing. The only thing that is required, and another state by state thing, which is really weird, is the state of Kansas requires any like remains or cremains that go into the ground has to be in a vault. So you have to buy a concrete vault to put them in, so that way it doesn't disturb the ground and it doesn't harm the actual like coffin or the urn that's being interred. And so again, that's a state by state varied thing. So that's the one thing of like, oh, if you want to like, you know, inter someone, you have to have a vault in the state of Kansas. So I learned
Wow,
that was
that
a kind
is
of fascinating thing.
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the vault, and the fact of the matter is, with all of the water in the ground, not to be like, sorry, funeral industry, but like they crack, they break,
Yeah.
the water still gets in there. I'm just like, what is the purpose? It disintegrates after a while. So I can't, I don't know. I have this like, I'm super fascinated by all of it, but then I also wonder, why do we try to have with, being embalmed and all, like, we're going in the ground. Why are we trying to
Right.
like make it the most serene, perfect little place ever? I know people are in grief. They're so, not wanting to think about their family member disintegrating, but there's almost something peaceful about naturally
Yeah.
going back into the earth, I guess. I don't know. I have such weird thoughts about all of it, but that's
Oh,
fascinating that.
yeah. You hear weird things from different people and different families and different walks of life. Like I did a few Vietnamese services, and they're the most gorgeous services. They're beautiful, and they're like these big, like almost
Really?
like galas. Everyone is dressed to the nines, and they get these big, beautiful, like wooden hand carved coffins, and then they put like $10,000-$20,000 in cash in there, and then they cremate them. So they
Oh,
embalm them,
I
put
was
them in
like,
these
grave
beautiful
robbing.
no, and so, but that's just part of their tradition. And so you just learn a whole bunch of interesting things. Like we had one woman, she was 6 months to the day from turning 100, and she was a seamstress in World War II and fell in love with it, ended up becoming a fashion model locally here and made her own wedding dress line. And like these are the things that
Oh
you
my
learn from like
gosh.
the families and on the obituaries of their lives and things. It's a very fascinating kind of, it's a very
Oh, I'm
hard
sure.
industry to be in, but at the same time, it's just very rewarding because you're learning so many things about so many different people.
Oh
So
yes. I'm
it's
and you have
definitely,
to be that calm presence for them too, and
yeah,
be able to be a comforting, safe place for them. And I'm sure that that's really rewarding
yes,
and nice. I feel like I would love all of that environment, but then when it came to kids, I can't, like, I can't handle that. It's just, I
yeah,
can't read it in horror. I can't be, I just, oh, that's too much trauma in my life for sure. So, well, that is fascinating. It sounds like you really enjoy the work that you get to do in the funeral industry. And so then
yeah,
that's bled over into your books, into your
yes.
book
All so
writing, right?
so many of my
Okay.
characters, and
Okay.
yeah.
So your book, let's talk about your book that's coming out next year. What was the
Mhm.
process like? Did you just have a spur of the moment inspiration for that book, or were you like in the middle of an embalming and you were like, "Oh, I think I want to write a book about this in space." Like, how did that go?
Well, this one, it's so funny because I was talking to somebody on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. They were like, I don't know what
Who
the
could keep
process
up?
is. Right. They're like, I don't know what the process is of like, is it okay to turn short stories into like full manuscripts? And I was like, almost every single one of my completed manuscripts came from a short story. And this was
Yeah.
originally supposed to be about a 15-page short story that the longer I started writing it, the more I'm like, oh, but I could add this, and oh, I could add this, and I could do, expand on it. And sometimes I just get into these zones, or next thing I know, I'm like, oh, I'm 20,000 words deep, and I have no idea how I got here, but it's working.
No longer a
And
short story.
no,
Well,
they
that's
never,
great.
even my short stories are never short.
Well, and you're a prolific short story writer. And in my pre-search before the episode, I was noticing that you do a lot of that short fiction. You have a lot
Mhm.
of doing anthologies and short stories. So that definitely seems to be your major writing space. And then you just bloom them out into manuscripts. right?
Which is
Okay.
funny because when I first started, like, because I've always wanted to be a writer. Like got my first laptop and wrote my first story when I was 10. I had 3 books written by the time I was 12, and like I had something published when I was like 15. And then life happened, and college and school and parents
I get
passing
it.
away
Yep.
and moving and things like that. And then COVID happened, and I had no choice. And so I was like, oh, I guess I'm
Right.
going to get back into doing this. And
Yep.
I actually have the date tattooed on my finger. On the 27th of March of 2020, I sat down and started writing the first book in my space opera series. And that series currently, between the 5, almost 6 books that are done, of the 8 books that are planned, is 1.3 million words long. It's huge. And
Lord.
so trying to edit and it takes place in the span of like 50 years worth of time over 3 generations, and I was like trying to keep track of all that. I'm like, man, I just need a break. And then someone was like, oh, we have like short story sub calls for anthologies. I'm like, oh, this sounds fun. And I was like, oh, it's a refreshing little thing to be able to write something that's only 2,000-3,000 words. And so
Yeah.
I try to do those in between all of these insane manuscripts that I have that are taking up so much time, because
Yeah, that's a lot. Well, and that's
it's a
my
lot.
problem, is that the ideas, they constantly flow, but then I want to turn them into something larger always. And so then
Yep.
I can't rein it in to be in short, and I want to so badly to be in short story
Right.
world. And I'm just like, oh, but what a novel this would make. And then I'm like, bitch, you don't have time.
Right.
You don't have time. Like,
Right.
write the short story, get it out for at least a little bit, No, I'm like, oh, the new shiny thing over here, another manuscript idea.
Yep.
Let's go. So yeah, I totally get that. So then what is your writing process like? I mean, 20,000 words, busting it out. And I want to ask too, it's NaNoWriMo. I'm assuming you're participating. Okay. So are you a word counter? Are you a let the wind take you where you go type of writer? Do you plot extremely? Like, what's your process like?
I am kind of a little all over the place. My cat has decided she needs to be a part of this.
She's on the pod too. Welcome, kitty.
She is. She says hello. Oh, hello.
What is Kitty's name?
Is Jukebox the Ghost, after one of my favorite bands.
Oh, that's fun. I love it.
We call her Box. But yeah, so my process is like a little bit all over the place. I'm pretty much like, I'll have an idea, and then what I'll do is I'll like sit and think about it while I'm like driving or working, and then I will just sit down and just let whatever happens. And so it's very much like maybe 15% plotting, and the rest of it just kind of like going with the flow.
Okay.
But like,
so like ruminating on it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I used to have, when I lived in Kentucky, there was a 83-mile long park that just had walking trails through nature. And when COVID happened, no one was out, and the people who were, it's an outdoor park, like nothing had happened. So I would go out when the moment the sun would rise, I would go out and I would go and do like a 5K worth of walking through nature and through the forest. And then I would sit down and I would go to bed, and then I would wake up and I would write all the things that I thought about. And I would stay up and write until the sun came back up, and I would end my day with a walk. And so I got into that cycle. But it's, I get the point. I save everything. Like, I have 7,000 drafts of every single thing. And I'll go through like every quarter and like calculate up all of the total word counts for all the short stories, all the books, all the web novels, all the manuscripts. And I think the last time I did it, it was 2.5 million words worth of writing since I started in March of 2020. And so at this point, I average 55 to 60K words a month. So Nano's like nothing.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I thought
Nano's
that
just
it
kind of
was.
like,
Yeah, no, that's for, and then there's the rest of us. And I thought about that just the other day. And so I was typing an email because in my daytime life, I have to send an exorbitant amount of emails and type a lot of things. And so I was like, I wonder how many actual words that are not writing related, you know what I mean? Like that are writing for my career, my daytime career, how many I write in that. I wish I had something that like could calculate it, but there's no way. Like there's no way that I could even begin to fathom counting it. I love the idea of counting your written works though. And that's something that I want to challenge myself and my husband to do that, which my husband, he's at literal like future serial killer. You know how they say serial killers have those traits that you know about? Okay. And you're like, we should have known. That's this man. He wrote 200,000 words by hand on notebook paper, 2 lines per line. Is that not a serial? That's a serial killer, and I'm
That's a
married to
little,
him.
yeah,
Like,
that's a
I
little,
mean,
like, yeah. That's very
total,
split and very
total,
explosive.
like, suspicious. Yeah, for sure. So I'm like thinking about his word count between all of the teeny tiny writings on like post-it notes and shit, and then
Right.
and then him typing. I mean, he obviously translates it over into typing. That's when he edits. But like, what the fuck? That would be a lot of
A
words. So
lot.
now I'm curious. I'm gonna have to go count how much we've written, because that would really fascinate me to know. Like, now I'm wondering how many words my dissertation was. Like, I just keep thinking of all these things. I'm
Right.
like, how long? Like, I know how many pages these things were, but how many words? That's cool. So
Yeah. How many words have you deleted that you don't even remember are there because they're not showing up on the word
Oh,
counter anymore? That's the thing that drives me
yes.
crazy. It's like, how many of these are gone that I
Oh my
don't get to see?
And then where do they go? Do they go live in desolate, deleted words land, where all the writing, that that's it. There you go. Another story idea right there. You can take that one and run with it. I don't have time. So, because I already know I can't commit to what I'm committed to. Like, I get, yeah. So, well, that's awesome. So do you have are you one of these that listens to music when you're writing, or because you do the nature vibes and then come back in and write? Are you have to have like a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, or do you have to like set the scene, or are you just like, oh, inspiration has hit, I've got to write?
I will literally just sit down. I will turn on my heating pad and I will like binge watch like screaming men playing things on YouTube. Like I'll sit down and like play a thing of Let's Plays and like watch like all those throughout the day and just sit and listen to them scream and just write and go from there. So it's
Really?
not I was curious. I have security cameras in my apartment, and I was like wondering like what do I look like when I'm sitting here writing? And so I like looked at myself. I literally and I figured out like I had to go apologize to my chiropractor because like I figured out why I'm always broken. I literally sit there with my neck craned like the bit neck lady from like Haunting of Hill House. My head will slowly start to tilt until it's sitting even my ear on my shoulder when I'm getting into writing, and I sit all like goblin mode. I'm like, well, no wonder I'm always like so stiff and
Right. Oh my
wrestling
gosh.
myself like when I'm writing, and that's
Yes, that's funny. I've seen those little videos on TikTok where people will like take a, fast version, they'll set up recording and record themselves writing for all this time. And so my husband and I thought that we because we write together, we thought it would be funny to do that. And I look like a little like hag witch sitting there, and I was
little
like, that
golem
is
thing sitting
not
there like
yeah, I was like this, or I was like leaned back and all kicked out, and we're like having our hookah. I'm like, this is not attractive. This is awful. Like,
it's not a pretty process.
no, not at all. Not at all. I was just like, oh dear. They have, you always, I think people envision writers, sitting there or maybe having their little cigar, or their, at their fancy writing desk. And I'm like, half of us are chilled out, like sitting in our comfy chairs with our blankies and our, so whatever
There's
works.
a horror book, and I can't for the life of me. It's called Kill Creek, and it's kind of like that episode of Scooby Doo where they had to like go inherit the house if they can survive the night kind of thing, which is really
Yes.
funny because when I went to go see my acupuncturist, I would drive by Kill Creek like multiple times a month. So like I know where that area is. Like it's like
That's
20 minutes from where I
cool.
live. But like the writer chick in that story, he like describes her as like getting up and doing yoga and then walking to her leather armchair butt naked with a glass of wine to sit down and write in the morning sunlight. I'm like, no one does that.
I
Like,
mean, that's
that's
not
not
how
how
it
that
goes.
works. We
Not how
wish.
it goes.
We
Maybe,
wish.
yeah, maybe no clothes. I'm pretty open about our nudity here on the podcast, but like a glass of wine in the early morning sun, absolutely not.
No,
Absolutely not.
he's like with her floor to ceiling glass windows that looked out over her expansive property. I was like, who is this?
Yeah,
Who is
she's
this
already
woman?
famous. Like, already, like that's not a regular old writer for sure. God, oh
No,
my god,
no.
no,
I was like,
that's like men writers writing women. She breasted breastily across the room, like
yeah,
that kind of shit. Like, not
basically.
believable. Yeah, love that, love that. Oh my god, that is so okay. So let me ask you this then: with knowing in some people's writing, you could recognize like, oh, is that really legit? Like, that doesn't. And who was that? We're not trying to call you out. Was it Scott Thomas that wrote Kill Creek? I think. Is
I
that
think
who?
so, yeah.
I think so. Yeah. We're not trying to call you out,
It's
Scott. I mean, maybe it was some beautiful somebody that is able to go out with their nakedness and their glass of wine and for the rest of us. How do you try to balance with specifically writing science fiction and like in space, sticking true to things that actually happen in space? Do you know what I mean? Like, with obviously you have to have oxygen to breathe and that sort of thing. So how does that play into your horror writing? How, like, trying to stay consistent to actual science?
Well, one of the things like my favorite subgenres of horror are eco horror, horror romance, and apartment horror. I love things that take place in tight, tiny, cramped spaces. Because like I live in a tiny, cramped apartment, and so like my debut novella, the entire thing takes place in the confines of an RV. Like they don't leave the RV until like the last like 15 pages. The whole thing takes place in an RV. And so when I have these sci-fi horror type of locations, when it's like a tiny outpost, for me it starts to turn into that, like, how can I use that environment and the things that can happen to it as an advantage to amplify the horror? Because there's like nothing scarier than when you're sitting there and like trying to do an autopsy and the body starts to move and you're in a confined space and you can't leave and you're
Yeah.
tethered to your equipment, or when gravity starts to falter, how does that sort of stuff work? So I try to like weave that in, and it's hard because you don't want to be like an exposition dump of like, this is how all the science works, but it's kind of like piecing it in there and like describing the environment, of like describing the layout of like one whole wall in this outpost is full of hydroponic stations, and so it's full of flowers and water, and so like adding those of like, oh, the water suddenly stopped, why can't I hear it? Is it the gravity? Did
Yes.
oxygen fail? Did power die? So you kind of use those things to like play into the environment of the story, so that way you can also be a little bit finicky and you don't have to be entirely scientifically accurate.
Yeah.
But it also like adds to the ambience and the horror of it
Yeah.
all. So I
And
love
being
those sorts of
immersed.
things.
That is cool.
Yeah.
And I have to I have to walk a very thin line with that too, not in the biological perspective or ecological, but from a historical, because I
Yeah.
like history. And so diving into it, but I'm like, okay, this is not a history lesson, Marie. Calm down. They're not
Right.
trying to learn about the culture of the people, but like I'm like, calm down with the exposition. They're gonna get it. Just thread enough in there so that it's not like, it helps with
Yeah.
that ambiance that you're talking about. So yeah, but not an entire, because it would become a history lesson if
Right.
it could. So yeah,
Yeah. I
warning to
spent one
anyone
time
in reading my books. Yeah.
like 45 minutes trying to research like when certain types of light bulbs were like created, because I didn't want to mention the wrong kind of light bulb in a story that took place in the 1950s. No one's gonna care, but to me it was important.
Oh, I would care. I would care. No, see, I promise you I would. I'm weird like that. I'm one of that, and I always think of the me's out there that are like, they are gonna know that dress
Right.
that was not in that time, because I'm a freak like that. That if I'm reading something and something like pops out to me, and I'm like, is that? I don't know about that, and I will look it up like a freaking like absolutely ridiculous, but I will do it because it's just. But also, so it's a fun thing, because you also have to watch your colloquialisms and like the
Mm-hmm.
phrases and that sort of thing, because they might say, I can't even think of one right now, but I'm always having to cleanse them from my writing, because I'm like, I
Yeah.
didn't talk like that in 1845, and so that's, I think, at least with space or aliens and that sort of thing, you get a little bit of flexibility there, because
Yeah.
it's, I mean, the entire universe is your oyster instead of the
Right.
world. So that's, yeah, that's good. So I have to ask, what is your favorite written work that you've ever created thus far?
Um, I have a novella that I have a Kickstarter planned for in March. And it is my absolute favorite piece of thing that I've ever written. It's a kind of weird, I call it a sensory deprivation novella it's called He Hears Death, and it is kind of a mix of Silent Hill for The Room and House of Leaves.
Ooh, I'm
And
intrigued.
so, and it's interesting because I got inspired to do it because I went to go, the first movie I went to go see back after COVID was The Green Knight. And I love A24 films. I love Dev Patel. That man can be in anything and I'll watch it.
Oh, yes, yes.
But I have an auditory processing disorder, and so I can't understand when A24 does those whispery type of, like, I can't understand a single thing. And the movie was gorgeous. I have no idea what was happening.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. When it's
like,
like it,
yeah.
yeah. I could.
Yeah, like,
That's an interesting experience, I bet, because that's a lot. That's a lot of information coming at you at one time. So yeah,
yeah.
wow, interesting.
And I went to use like the closed captioning machine, and I got bullied out of the theater because it was bulky and it took up space, and because it takes up a cup holder, and it's this big, massive, like bendy bar, and there were people who were like kids being stupid kids were making fun of me and laughing to my face by carrying this thing with me, and so I had to leave the theater. It was my first time back after COVID, and it was one of those. I'm like, it's annoying because it's like I'm not deaf, I'm not hard of hearing, but I
Yeah.
can't process things. And so I was sitting there like, I want to write a story to like spite, because I spite, right?
Yes.
If I get a rejection
same.
from something, I
Yes.
spite, right? So that's just my normal state of mind.
Yes.
But and so I wanted to like do something that kind of like reflected what it was like to experience things from that end of things. And so this whole story is about, and go figure, it's about an embalmer who works at a funeral home.
Surprise!
That is hard of hearing, and he was greeted by death as a child, and so he can hear the voices of spirits, but he can't hear the actual world around him. And so anytime that like people are talking to him or interacting with him, the text gets like lighter gray, so it's harder to read. So like you are experiencing that difficulty with him, and then like when the spirits are talking, it's bold and it's bright and it's vivid, and the whole thing is tarot inspired. So none of the characters have actual names. Like the main character is the fool, and his husband is the lover, and
that
it has like things.
Amazing.
I'm so excited for it. I have my cover artist is getting the sketches done, and she actually did official tour merch artwork for Orville Pack. So the cover is going to be gorgeous.
Oh, how
so
awesome!
excited.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I cannot
Yeah.
wait for this one. Say the name of it one more time so that everybody can go help with the Kickstarter.
It's going to be called He Hears Death, and I'm hoping to launch it the first weekend in March because there's a big con happening, and so I'm like planning to launch it the day that the con is happening because I'm going to be there and can be like, hey, come and pick this up. So that's going to be coming in March. I have one starting on the 20th, so I have one starting in 6 days as well for something else. That's not as big as this massive other novella that requires professional formatting because I don't know how to format.
That shit is miserable. Let me tell you, it's bad. I was doing some of that earlier today, and like I'm a multi-passionate person. I dive head into all the things, but man, fuck formatting. Like, it's just, it's really bad. Yeah, really bad. Yeah. So I
never
get it.
Again.
There's some that love it, and those that love it, love you guys. Because for those of us that don't, man, yeah, not for us, for sure.
No.
Okay,
No,
and so yeah, no. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can be found on all of your social medias and Kickstarter and everything at Maybe Mockingbird. Is that your handle across the board, or do you have other websites that you'd like for everyone to know about? Because I want to make sure they can find you to support your ventures.
Right. That is my handle on everything except for Twitter, because Twitter only allows a certain number of characters, and it's one character too short. So on Twitter, it's May, the letter B, and then Mockingbird. Everywhere else, it's actually Maybe Mockingbird spelled out.
Okay, so Maybe Mockingbird. Well, I mean, good old Twitter or X, whatever the fuck they are. Yeah. Well, and it seems like people there was a mass exodus, and then everybody went to Blue Sky and Threads, and now I'm seeing people seem to be kind of migrating back over to Twitter, and I'm like, I think I don't know what we're doing right now. It's a sad, strange world that we're living in.
It's weird.
So, yeah. So maybe Mockingbird, and you have Patreon and Instagram, TikTok, all the things, right? All the things.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Patreon
and
is
that's where they can
Alicia
find you.
Davidson. Yeah, Patreon is Alicia Davidson author. And then my website is disturbance.alicia.weebly.com. So, and I have links to everything on my
perfect.
website to make it easy. So,
Okay. See, that's perfect. Yeah, and I plan to link your link tree in the show notes. That way everybody can find one-stop shop, find everything you got there, and they can go and donate to your causes, get your books, find some awesome short stories and all the websites that you do, all that cool stuff. So now I have to ask you, are you ready for the lightning round?
I am.
Okay, here we go. So I tried to make these more space themed this time, since you in the space world. So, would you rather encounter a black hole or a fearsome creature deep in space? If you could survive the
Probably
black hole.
a creature.
A creature? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, cool. I honestly feel like I'd rather go for the black hole. I'd be like, just shoot me in there. I want to see what's up. If I could survive it, you know? So, would you rather face the theorized ends of the universe, or would you rather never go to space at all? So it's either the total end or never.
Oh wow.
Hard
God, I
hitting
really want to go to
questions here on the
space.
pod.
It is. Well, because that's the problem is that my biggest dream is to go to space. My biggest fear is the end of the world. So like you're hitting
Yeah,
here. It's like
man, perfect, perfect.
God, I expect this to be so hard.
No one does. I come in here with the kill. Like, nobody expects it to be hard.
I think I want to go to space because the end of the world's going to happen whether I say to or not. So I feel like that's going to happen. Send me to space.
That's
Send me to
right.
space as the world is ending at that
Yes,
point.
yes, and you can just float around and see what is that? Was it an episode of Doctor Who where they were watching Earth explode? The end. Do you watch Doctor Who? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think that sounds familiar. Yeah.
I think there's an episode where they get to watch like Earth explode, and it's a whole thing. And I'm like, I'm sure, I'm sure the aliens will be glad to see us go, but
Right.
okay. Would you rather be stranded on a desolate planet or face a swarm of asteroids while you're in a spaceship in space?
Desolate planet, because then I'll be alone.
Sounds peaceful. I would go for that too. I would be like, that sounds peaceful. That sounds nice. I can just hang out and be quiet. It'd be great. Then we'd end up on like the water planet from what's that?
Subnautica?
Yeah. Like, so where it's just all water and there's like nothing. Yeah. And that would be shit out of luck because I'm not a very good strong swimmer. Like, it would be awful.
No.
Oh man, yeah. Okay, would you rather explore the vastness of space alone or have to confront a malevolent extraterrestrial entity in order to get to your friends?
I'd go it alone.
Go at it alone. Yeah, fuck the friends. Just, yeah.
As long as I can bring my cat, I'll be fine.
We don't need them. We don't need them. Friends are overrated. Yeah, we can go see what else is happening up in space. That's good. That's good. Okay. Would you rather discover that Earth is the only planet with life, which would be super fucking lame, or encounter an unknown alien civilization, but they kill you?
I think I'd be fine knowing anything else is out there. That would be fine.
It would be okay. It would be okay.
Okay.
Peaceful. Yeah, peaceful. Okay. Would you rather? I feel like I was like, it must have been really late when I wrote these or something, because some of these questions I'm like looking at them like, whoa. Would you rather experience the concept of the universe repeating itself in another Big Bang, so having to experience another Big Bang, assuming that you survive, or face a cosmic horror beyond human comprehension? I made these like all awful options.
I love the nihilism. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what kind of mood I was in when I wrote these. Like,
It's cool to come face to face with a cosmic horror.
definitely. I think
Fun.
so too. Yeah. Just, might as well see what it's about. Okay, let's see. Would you rather visit a haunted space station, which
Mhm.
sounds like a fun book idea, by the way, so put that one in your tool belt. Uh, or would you rather visit a haunted village on another planet?
Oh. Well, that's hard because both of those sound amazing. Uh, because I love that isolated, like claustrophobic horror so much, I probably have to say the space station or the spaceship because I think that'd be
Some
super.
unnerving
Yeah.
shit right there. Yeah, that's some scariness for sure. Okay, let's see, ghosts or aliens? Which one?
Ghosts. I love ghosty stuff.
Okay. Okay. You need like an ethereal alien, like a ghosty type of, in the trapped in a tiny, tiny little cabin out in space.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're
Okay.
describing most of my library.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. That sounds
amazing
awesome.
ghosts.
I love that. That sounds awesome. Okay. So this is the weirdest one. It's our final question. Would you rather become an alien and never return to Earth, or have an alien best friend, but the catch is that they only eat humans?
That one.
I'm like,
I want the
yeah,
alien best
the
friend that
alien
can
they
just
eat.
eat
Yeah,
all the people I
yeah.
don't like.
Again, I would be really concerned. All of your friends, as they listen to this podcast, you're like, I don't need them. I
Oh
would feed
no.
it to the alien.
Oh no, they do the same thing.
It's
They're
fine.
all
Yeah,
confused.
we would expect nothing less. Good to know. Good to know. So don't worry, your Alien Eats All My Friends book coming out in 2026. Like, don't worry about it, everybody. It's fine. Awesome. Well, I have so enjoyed having you on the pod today. Thank you for joining us here
Thank
on
you for having
Little.
me.
You're so welcome. Good, good. And one more time, tell everybody they can find you at.
My website is disturbancesbyalisa.weebly.com. I am maybe Mockingbird on everything except for Twitter, and it's May, the letter B, Mockingbird over there. So,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. We're going to make sure to find that. And we're definitely going to go fund the Kickstarter for that badass novella coming out next year
I'm
because that
excited.
sounds amazing. Yes. And then you have, we'll be watching for your Queer Eco Space Horror too, coming out later in 2024 from Timber Ghost Press. So lots of exciting
Yes.
things happening for you. Thanks again for coming. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. We'll
thank
keep in
you.
touch. We'll see you from Moths to the Flame. See how you're doing with all your writing ventures. So we appreciate
That'd be
it.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.